start here. I'm in the Adobe Photoshop Creative Cloud Edition. Why am I in Photoshop? You must ask if you're thinking about perfect layers. No reason whatsoever. In fact, all I'm trying to prove here is that we don't have perfect layers inside of Adobe Photoshop. We don't need it, do we? Because we have Adobe Photoshop's layers. And if I click on the little layers icon, you'll see my layer. I can duplicate layers, I can multiply layers, I can merge and blend layers, all inside of Photoshop. I don't need on one's layers if I'm working in a Photoshop workflow. If I click on the little box next to layers, you see the plugins available to you, including one called Perfect Batch, which we don't shout about in the suite normally, but it is a fantastic batch processing capability inside the suite. But you'll see Perfect Batch, Perfect Black and White, Effects, Enhance, Mask, Portrait, Resize, but no perfect layers. And that's all I'm going to talk about with Photoshop right now, because instead I'm going to show you our layering capability now. First of all, inside of Adobe Photoshop Lightroom. Okay? Now, I've got a picture on my screen inside of Lightroom. It's a rather dull, horrible-looking picture of a tomb in an old graveyard in Derbyshire. This was full of it was a fantastic place. I took lots of pictures in here of plague tombs from the 1660s. This one's a little bit newer, believe it or not. Anyway, let's go from File inside of my Lightroom and find how we open up pictures and open up the full power of your layers inside of Lightroom. You go down, of course, to Plugin Extras, and inside of Plugin Extras you then activate your suite with all of your programs accessible, your perfect layers, your perfect mask if you want to go to individual components of the suite. So we have an option right at the bottom of that list saying Open as Layers in Perfect Layers 8. Now, the point about that is that we might have several different pictures selected. Imagine for one moment if we were deciding to do, for instance, a montage or a mask or a collage even. If we wanted to combine a foreground picture with a new sky, replace a background, we could select two pictures in our Lightroom database, open those as layers inside of Perfect Layers, and they will appear as separate layers in our little layers panel on the right hand side of the screen. And then we can start our work on them, and then we can elect to save the image back into Lightroom. I do get a lot of questions from people. How do you tell the software to save in a particular file format for a Lightroom database? You go here. You go to the little Perfect Photo Suite name, top left hand corner of the screen, and you go to Preferences. And inside of your Preferences, when you get a little panel in the middle of the screen, you go to Lightroom Plugins and you select your file type. I think it goes over the heads of lots of people. A lot of people think, oh, I can open a raw file in Lightroom, edit it on OneSuite, but only save it as a JPEG. No, not true. I can save as a full-blown, split-layered file. All the layers will be active for you inside your Lightroom database, or I can save as a TIFF file, my preferred file format. It condenses the layers together, but it gives you a fantastic image quality, or I can save as a good old JPEG. It's your choice. But don't forget to go to Lightroom Plugins and select what you want to do with your images, okay? This is for Lightroom users primarily. Right. I'm not going to save that particular image. I've got lots of images in my Lightroom database that we use from time to time, but I'll quit Lightroom for the time being, and I'll skip the backup, which I always do, and I always regret it in Lightroom. And now we'll go to the suite in standalone mode. Now, normally in a suite workflow, the starting point for your image editing isn't actually image editing at all. It's finding your files, and it's called Perfect Browse. And Perfect Browse gives you an interface that enables you to locate your images. They could be on cloud services these days. I don't want to put my images on cloud services. I'm a little bit old and a little bit worried about where my pictures are going to go and who's going to get hold of them one day. So I tend to keep them on a terabyte hard drive here in the office. But we've got lots of different images. I've got a file area that is actually my desktop, and I can get my pictures from anywhere on there. Okay, now let's take a look and open up a simple image. I'm going to start with a raw file. Another question: can we open raw files directly within the suite? Remember, the suite through the rest of this presentation is going to work in standalone mode. Now, the first picture we'll look at is this little baby. We attended a show recently called it wasn't a baby show, it was the newborn baby show here in the UK. First time it's happened. I'm going to select an image. It's called an ORF file. That's an Olympus RAW file. And a colleague of mine, a professional photographer, gave me this picture to use. I'm now going to move from Browse and click on Layers, and when I click on Layers, I get a little option box in the middle of the screen that says, what to edit, basically. Do I want to edit a copy? And I'm going to say yes, because I never want to edit the original image if I can get away with it. I would rather make a copy so that the original is kept safe. Do I want to edit the original file? No, I'm not going to. It's a raw file. There's no JPEG original, so this is the original effectively. Or do I want to add the image as a layer? We won't go there yet, but we're going to come back and add some layers to our images as we work. Now, underneath there, I have a little list of things called copy options. Once again, I can set the preferred file format for me to work in and work out of by saving out the image as a Photoshop file, a PSD file, as in Lightroom, for instance, and as in Photoshop for preserving all your layers, a TIFF file, or a JPEG. We don't preserve layers in TIFF files. I did mention that earlier inside of Lightroom. I think Photoshop's the only place that you can go to save layered TIFF images. Probably the only place, and I don't think they let other people do it. Okay, anyway, think about color space. Think about the color space that your printer is set to, your lab is set to if you use printing services outside. Think what your camera is set to. Think what your image, your screen calibration system, whatever that may be, that is set to. Adobe RGB 1998 works fine for me, so I'm going to say OK. And the image will now load into my Perfect Layers application. Now we're going to do a couple of strange things with this baby in terms of image manipulation, and then we're going to do a really nice retouch and rework of this image. But we always start our editing process in On1 software inside of Perfect Layers, and it makes perfect sense if you think about it. For instance, if I want to make this image substantially darker, more saturated, a little bit deeper in tone because it's quite soft. Soft is baby, baby is soft. I think it should be nice and soft. But if I wanted to make this image look a bit grittier and grainier, then I could go into any of the programs like Perfect Enhance, Perfect Effects, Perfect Black and White, Perfect Portrait indeed. I could edit and manipulate the image in any of those, but I can actually start my editing process inside of Perfect Layers. I don't need to go any further if I don't want to. And the way I would do that is to take the picture and copy it. So go over to the Layers panel on the right-hand side of the screen and click on the little icon underneath the tiny thumbnail of the baby and say Duplicate Layer. We now have a duplicated version of the picture. Now, above those little layers, we have two layers. The topmost layer is the active layer. If I duplicated this picture 10 more times, which I don't aim to do, it will always be that top layer that is active. Go to blending modes. We have 23. I think it's 23. I counted them years ago. I'm fairly certain it's 23. I'm sure someone's counting them now. Tell me if I'm wrong. I have blending modes, ways of combining the two layers together into a single look and feel. Multiply, for instance. That's my favourite look and feel. Now, I think that baby looks a little bit too deep, it looks a little bit too contrasty, but actually it probably looks more like the real baby that we shot in the picture. In fact, we've lightened the image a little bit to get just the kind of effect that the mother would prefer. Colour burn, linear burns don't do very nice things to the image, but all of these presets, all you need to do is just drift your cursor over any of these blending modes, these presets, and you get the effect. If we go back to multiply and click, the blending mode option changes to that multiply version. If I change the layer opacity, what's happening here is that the transparency, if you will, of this top layer is being adjusted. So as I move this little slider down to the left-hand side and take it, say, down to the middle, the image has become lighter. That's because we've made this top layer more transparent. And I can take it right down to 0, which effectively switches off that top layer, which is now completely transparent. And so we can only see the bottom layer in the image. If I move it back up, gradually the image gets a little bit darker. This is a nice way of being able to adjust the image without doing too much to it. I don't need to go into Perfect Enhance necessarily, but of course inside Perfect Enhance I've got so many more options. Okay, now if you like the effect that you've got with 42% of multiply on the image, let's do this. Let's merge those two layers together. Okay, just like flattening an image inside of Photoshop or Photoshop Elements. Okay, so now we've got one picture slightly adjusted. That's nice. What I can do now is to take the image, say, into Perfect Portrait. And in Perfect Portrait, the software analyzes the picture, finds eyes, teeth, skin, anything on the image that we want to adjust. And if I just move down here, I'm going to take an option of a little retouch brush, and I'm going to use a preset, and I'm going to go to Children, obviously, and then select a nice softening routine on the skin, and I'll actually use Subtle, and I'll click on it and apply that subtle option into the picture of the baby and the baby's skin, and then start to adjust it slightly by adjusting and removing more of the blemishes on the skin. I tell you what, it's amazing, but baby's skin is supposed to be fantastic, but when you look at baby's skin in detail, there are always little lumps and bumps and dry skin. This was a newborn baby show, so I don't know how old ladies, I'm not sure how old this baby is, but it was incredibly young, as you can see. It was asleep almost all the time. I'm going to make a few little adjustments to this skin retouching option here, and then I'm going to take a brush. The brush that I selected is a little retouch brush, and I'm just going to remove some tiny little marks on the skin. There's a tiny little spot on that cheek. And subtle, subtle, I'm going to reduce the opacity of the brush. Remember, we're inside of Perfect Portrait now. The reason will become obvious when we move from here. And tiny little options there. Let's just remove a little bit of the shadow. There's a long shadow just along the little baby's arm. I don't even know if this was a boy or a girl. Is it obvious? I don't think it is. And I'm just going to gradually dab that shadow away. So it just doesn't look quite so bad, and a little bulge underneath the baby's eye, we'll just remove that as well. Great, so we've got a nice little bit of retouching done on the image. It hardly needs anything doing to it, hope you agree. I think it's a really nice picture. And then when we finish, we apply the effect, which takes us back into Perfect Layers. Now, you can jump from Perfect Layers into Perfect Enhance, into Perfect Portrait, into Perfect Effects and Black and White directly, simply by clicking on each of the options. But I've kind of worked myself up to a point now where my workflow tends to run from between layers into, say, portrait, and then back into layers, because I might want to do a little more adjustment on the layers or on the image itself with some of the retouching tools inside of Perfect Layers, and then go back into something like Perfect Mask, maybe black and white. So I tend to discipline myself to keep going back into Perfect Layers as I work. It seems to help me to understand what I've been doing, and I think that's important, often with some very complex composite images as well. So there's our little baby. Notice the layers panel. We have the original picture underneath. Remember, first of all, we duplicated it and we applied a multiply blending option to the two layers, adjusted it slightly, and then we flattened those layers or merged those layers into one image. So we had one layer that we then took into Perfect Portrait, but now I've got two layers back. What's that all about? Well, the first one, of course, the top layer, the active layer, which is the light grey layer, is the Perfect Portrait retouch. And if I switch that off, you can see some of the blemishes, in fact all of the blemishes, and the image adjusts. It's subtle because it's a picture of a newborn baby, but if I switch Perfect Portrait back on by clicking on the eye icon, then those little blemishes disappear. At least most of them do. I'm not saying this is a complete retouch, because in portraiture it's not always the case that you want to make everything as smooth as possible. Now, I have my two layers here. That's great. What I will do with this now is to take the top layer into Perfect Black and White. Now, Perfect Black and White is a black and white conversion tool. It's probably not something that you would use every day. I tend to like it, so I will use it. And what I will do is to find a user preset that I created. If you're familiar with Perfect Black and White, Perfect Portrait, Perfect Effects, Enhance, you'll know that those products rely on presets that On One software provide for you. But I like to take those presets a step further. And what I do with those presets is to create my own sets of presets. I'm going to go to Baby, Glow, Bob in User Presets, and I'm going to take that preset. If I say preset again, I think I'll go mad, and just say click, single click, applies the preset to the baby picture. Now, this might not be everybody's cup of tea in terms of an effect, but for me, it's a quick and simple solution to providing another option for the customer. He might or she might dislike this conversion themselves, but hey, it's another option. The preset was created by using an On One preset, which are all here inside of this panel. And with those On One presets, I then adjusted what we got, created my own preset, and you must do this yourselves. It's incredibly important for the future use of all of this software that you create your own presets. Go to Preset and say Save Preset, and then populate this dialog box and put in the presets and the adjustments that you've made to remind yourself how you created it, for instance, and then save it away. And what that means is then that the software becomes your software, and it's not the same as anybody else's because you've created an adjustment to the preset and then saved it. So with that user preset now, I will reapply the effect back into my Perfect Layers. Remember, we could be working inside of Photoshop, but then we wouldn't be talking about On One's layers, we'd be talking about Photoshop's layers. Look what we have now in our Layers panel. And I'll just pause for a second and have a sip of my tea before my voice goes. Gorgeous, right. Perfect Black and White is the top layer now. As we go through different components in the suite, we create, or the software creates, a completely new layer. And this is really useful, as you'd imagine, because it means that if I don't like that black and white effect on this image, I can delete it. And I can delete the layer by going to the icon underneath the Layers panel and saying Delete Layer. I don't want to delete that layer because I actually quite like the image. With a little bit of cropping, I think this would look really good. The perfect portrait option is still there, but is actually closed down to view. So now, for instance, if I switch off the black and white layer, there's the perfect portrait layer. And if I switch off the perfect portrait layer, there is the original picture of the baby. Now, this is incredibly simple layering processing. We're not going to get too complicated in this entire presentation. But I'm going to switch that back on because I do like that effect. And what we'll do now is to go to File. And from Perfect Layers, we go to Save our images. So Perfect Layers is the starting point for the image editing process in the entire suite. And then it's the finishing of all of our processes in the entire suite, because it's where I go to say Save As. And I save my image as Bob Baby Shot. Try and spell baby correctly, Bob. Soft. And I'll save it in the Suite 8 Beginner's Guide, which is the folder that I use for this particular thing. Do I want to save the layers in the file? Yes, why not? Because I might want to come back and edit them. Depends what the customer says about the picture. So let's just say save. And we now save the picture back out into Perfect Browse and into, in fact, if I go here, I should be able to find the picture in the mini browser inside of Perfect Layers. Let's just take a look at the interface for Perfect Layers before we go any further. Notice that the Bob Baby Shot soft.psd, remember it's a layered file, layered Photoshop file in fact, is now saved in this mini browser and also in the main Perfect Browse section. I tend to work, and this isn't a strict recommendation, but I tend to open the original images inside of Perfect Browse and then add extra layers, other bits, if I'm creating a composite type image, inside of Perfect Layers using this mini browse option. Okay, so the mini browser is on the left hand side of the screen. I can make the browser bigger or smaller depending on the amount of space that I want to work on the image in the middle of the screen. I call that workspace the workspace, in fact. Okay, there's the original picture, which I can click on at any time and reopen if I need to. And there is the little picture of the baby. Okay, now let's create a little bit of a different kind of image where we want to manipulate some of our images. And for that, we're going to go down to a picture called Lone Tree. This is a little masking exercise. Some of you will have seen this before. Many of you will have probably seen this before, but we're going to show it to you anyway, because I want to show you how to move layers. Let's take the Lone Tree picture. Double click on it and say edit a copy. Say OK. And I can imagine the questions going through some of your minds at the moment. And that is, Bob, are you going to cut this tree out of that blue background? And are you therefore going to put another sky behind the tree? And of course I'm going to say yes. Then you're going to say, well, why didn't you open that and the new layer at the same time? Well, I want to start simple. Let's start simply so that you can get the process. There is my tree. Indeed, the clever people in the audience said, what are you going to do with it? Well, yes, I'm going to remove that blue background. To do that, I'm going to use a process called Perfect Mask, so another of the options inside the suite. But before I do it, I'm going to do something quite clever. Well, let's see if it's clever. Let's take the image on its own into Perfect Mask with a single click. The image is on its own. There is no background behind this tree. I've got a lot of different brushes inside this palette which will enable me to remove the background. I'm going to zoom in. This will take 4 or 5 seconds to appear on your screen. I know that from bitter experience. I've zoomed in to a portion of the tree and I take the image and I select a brush and I start to mask. Now this isn't a masking webinar, far from it. Now, what I'm doing is drawing on the right side of the tree trunk, and I'm removing background. But can I see it? It's almost impossible to see what the brush is doing. The branches are so tiny. The background is it's a weird looking checkerboard pattern, which is what it's normally referred to. It's a straightforward mask. I can't see anything in the image as I work. Great example of why you should always have the next layer, the layer behind this picture, in situ, so you can see the new background appearing. So let's cancel this process. And let's get out of Perfect Mask and go back into Perfect Layers. The navigator window is still set to zoomed in, so under the navigator panel, I'm going to click on a little box which says Fit. And if I hit that little fit box, the picture snaps back to 100% of its size. It fills the workspace. Now, so let's find another background to put behind that tree. And here it is, right underneath. It's a JPEG file. I think it's shot at a slightly lower resolution, so it will need a bit more work on it than just opening. Let's double click. Let's go. It's called Malta Sky, by the way, which is a bit weird because the tree is shot just behind our house here in Northamptonshire. Let's go and say this time add as a layer. If I open the image with edit a copy, it would simply open the picture of the Maltese sky as a totally separate image, and I couldn't combine the two. So what we need to do is to say add as a layer, say OK. Notice the tabs at the top of the screen are showing me the lone tree picture with the Maltese sky on top, and there's another tab with the first picture that I was working on. Okay. Now, can I open up that first picture? Yes, I can. Of course, it's the picture of the baby, and there are the 3 layers. It's all ready to be worked on a little bit more. Remember, I probably wanted to crop it. We'll do that at the end. Go back to lone tree. There are my 2 layers. The top layer is the new sky that I'm going to put behind the tree. But it's the wrong size. I said it was the wrong resolution, so what I will do is to transform it. The tools in the left-hand corner of the workspace inside of Perfect Layers perform an awful lot of the events and effects and processes that you would normally do in something like Photoshop or Photoshop Elements. So for instance, here's a transform tool. Click on the transform tool, and with the shift button pressed down, I get a nice proportional transformation of the sky. Just move it up into position. There's little buttons on the right hand side, the top right hand corner of the workspace to rotate the sky. I'm just going to flip it. And flipping it, make sure that the sun turns around into the right direction for this image. Once you've performed a transformation like this, you always have to apply it. If you don't, and if you just start to skip on to the next step, a little warning box will say, do you really want to apply this transformation? Or have you completely lost your mind and forgotten what you were doing? That happens to me all the time. Anyway, this time I remembered to apply the transformation. That's great. The top layer, the active layer, is the sky. Let's take that layer by clicking with the mouse button to select it, and let's drag it down. These are draggable layers, just like in Photoshop, just like in Photoshop Elements. Notice now, I'm holding the mouse button down. Finger is starting to hurt, but don't worry, I can take it. Dragging that layer down towards the tree highlights the tree with a little white line on the left-hand side and the top. It should be around the whole image. In fact, it probably is. No, it's kind of on the top and left. That's okay. That means that this layer, the software now thinks that the layer has moved from the top layer to the bottom layer. Let go. And it has. The tree appears in the picture. The sky is actually behind the tree. Now, something you need to remember in any of the processes from Perfect Layers into the rest of the suite is that the subject that you want to edit in this case the tree, it's the tree that I want to cut out from behind that sky, or the sky behind the tree. I want to cut that out. That has to be the active layer. If I was to click on Perfect Mask now, and I won't do it because it's wrong, the only image available for masking would be the sky, the new sky. That would be a pointless exercise. So make sure you click on the subject that you want to adjust. And it needn't be on that top layer. If this was a series of 10 different layers on an image, and you can have as many as your system can cope with, you might decide that you want to actually mask another layer in between. But in this case, I only want to mask the tree. The tree is now selected. Go to Perfect Mask. And from Perfect Mask, let's zoom in again. Apologies for the delay once again, but we're zoomed right into the detail. And what I want to prove to you now is that without that sky sitting behind the tree, you just can't see what you're masking. But look at this now. I'm going to stop and I'm going to have a sip of my tea because it's take a few seconds. Because that checkerboard pattern's gone, it is a load of rubbish. It really. I know you can change the checkerboard pattern to different colours, but I always forget to do that. And why make life complicated? Look at the sky appearing behind the tree, and look at the fantastic detail in the image. Almost too much, actually. There's almost too much information on the screen. It's amazing. I did see a little fault in the mask, and I'm just going to fix that because I'm going to go to the brush, select a slightly different brush and paint it in. Reduce the size of the brush and just go back to the, yeah, there's some highlights that I nicked off the, just chopped off the base of the trunk of the, I was trying to figure out what those big thick things were in the middle of trees. The trunk. Okay, great. I'm going to refit the image on the screen. I'm going to go back to my brush and I'm just going to paint in. You can change that mode switch, by the way, using the X key on the keyboard. If you get rather flash, like I'm not, but I know a lot of people who can use all these quick keys really fast, you can make your image look really amazing. But there's the mask coming. But you can see, with it's something I always preach. I don't preach a lot, but I preach a bit about masking, and that is, please try and make sure that you select the background behind the image and just make sure that's there so that you can make the best possible mask, because you can actually see whether the mask is going to have any fringing, it's going to have any problems in the image. And really, this is working beautifully. Mask, mask, mask. Will this be a new layer? No, it's going to be the layer of the tree. It doesn't generate a new layer because you've created a mask, but it does generate something pretty amazing, and you all guessed it. It's a layer mask. So let's just go up here and here, and just gradually, I think you're probably keeping pace with me. That's good. Let's just take away the background right at the top of the sky. That's good. The mask is looking fine. And then we say apply. And I'm going to apply back into Perfect Layers. Now, I could have said, take the image that I'd masked in Perfect Mask and take it into Perfect Effects so I can apply some wonderful kind of HDR look to the tree in the foreground and everything else. But that's a step too far for me. I want to keep disciplining myself to go out from layers into the plugin or the software that I want to use, in this case Perfect Mask, and then go from mask back into layers, and then from layers check that everything's working okay and go back into effects or enhance as I want to. Now notice the mask. There's a black and white version of it, and that's great because that's a layer mask, and that layer mask is a tool that I can copy and paste into other parts of the image. As a for instance, let's pretend that we wanted to take our tree now, the original picture of the tree, Lone Tree JPG for a JPEG image. I've got it selected in the browser. If I wanted to take that picture and darken the sky or enhance the foreground or create an effect on that blue sky, I could copy the layer mask and drop it into that image, and it would then have its own automatic mask. So it means the work I've just done to create a mask, in fact, what I wanted to do with my mask I've achieved. I wanted to replace the sky completely because that other sky looked awful and flat and boring. But if I just wanted to adjust the tonal values of, say, the tree and the hedge and not affect the blue sky in the original picture, then that layer mask can be copy and pasted into the picture. Now, that's great. Things are working okay. Let's take a look at a little more processing inside of Perfect Layers, because some of these tools are fantastic. Let's just start at the top. We did a transformation, didn't we? On the sky, in fact, in this image. We made the sky bigger. Great. I can transform and I can rotate images using that particular tool. The next one down is the cropping tool. Okay, let's crop. Simple. Let's just take the picture of the baby, and I'm going to flatten the layers together so that we end up with a single image. Why do you flatten layers? Well, a lot of people don't like to flatten layers. A lot of people will create a complete finished image but still want all the layers in place so that they can edit it sometime in the future. I tend to work in a fashion that means that before I even open my images, because I've taken them, I know what they look like, I start writing notes with something called a pencil and something called a piece of paper, and I write 1, I'm going to do this, 2, I'm going to do that, 3, I'm going to do that, 4, I'm going to flatten those layers, 5, I'm going to do this, and I write a list and just tick a series of, or check a series of lines of text that I've written to fit the image. Let's use, with a single layer now, the cropping tool and just crop the image a little bit. I'm going to crop some of the bottom out of it to just balance it a little bit better. It doesn't need a lot of cropping probably. And again, apply. Okay. The scissors tool enables me to trim parts of the image. So let's just take this little part of the image and trim it out and say apply. And we've cut a piece of the image that's sitting in the middle of the canvas, and we can apply other parts of the image to it by clipping and cropping and chopping. I would normally duplicate my layer. In fact, I'll undo that process. Duplicate the layer. Let's duplicate it. So we've got 2 copies of the baby now, and then crop a little piece out of there. Not quite sure how this is going to work, but let's try it anyway. And then say apply, and then take little segments and say apply, and gradually we're building a little montage, and I can switch my montages on and off. There's the little clip that I just made, and I can copy and paste that piece of an image. So you can build up quite complex montages of an image. We can undo as many times as we like, by the way, so it shouldn't be a problem. We've undone 5 times there. Undo, of course, is, as you'll all know, edit undo, but also Command or Control Z on the keyboard. Now, let's open another picture. This one is a picture of a church, and once again, several of you will have probably seen this a few times, but it's an image I like to use because it's a typical Bob Campbell touristy type picture. Nothing special in terms of photographic technique by any means. So, picture of a church. Single layered image. Not going to do anything else with this other than perhaps take it into Perfect Effects or Perfect Black and White. But the first thing I'm going to do is to run right down to the bottom of the tool palette and just use the zoom tool to enlarge the picture. And what we're going to do now is to use a couple of different little editing tools to remove the little distractions at the base of the picture. The one distraction in the bottom left-hand corner is a guy's car. It's a Mercedes estate car and a little piece of bollard. Now, inside of Perfect Photo Suite 8 Perfect Layers is a fantastic device. It's this one. It's called the Perfect Eraser. There are 2 other ways of retouching inside of Perfect Layers, and indeed the suite. A retouch brush, Actually, I use one inside of Perfect Portrait. There's one inside of Perfect Effects and Perfect Enhance. The retouch brush will enable me to just move over to parts of the image that we'd want to do simple little retouches, like there's a white mark on a piece of the stonework that's sloping down in the middle of the picture. Click, gone. Beautiful. There's little pot marks and bullet marks and all sorts of things in this church. And we'll just remove a few of those. It's in Normandy in the north of France. So you'll know why there's little bullet marks in it, but we'll get rid of those and just take any little bits away. There's little growths of plants and things in there as well. They need to take that out before it destroys the... So that's just a standard little retouching brush. If I use the Perfect Eraser, I will go and draw over the area of the image that I want to remove. Just watch this. I'll tell you when I'm going to do something. Now, I'm using the mouse button. I'm using a mouse. Could use a Wacom pressure sensitive pen, Wacom, but I don't. I use a mouse. Left hand button on the mouse draws the red mark over the subject. I fill in all the gaps and then I let go. Now. And the car disappears. Takes about 1.5 seconds. And for you, it's gone now, definitely. That's good. Here, I'm just going to remove the top of this little bollard on the right-hand side. They look like little chess pieces to me, little pawns. Let's take that one away. Let's take this one away in the middle. Just wipe it away. Draw over the subject and try and keep the area that you select around the subject fairly tight on the subject itself. Just take that away. And there we go. And if there's any little mark left, just click on it. It will disappear. Beautiful. The little road sign, which says stop or arrête in French. Let's just remove that by clicking. I actually used the Shift key to make a straight line selection. Standard procedure for most software. Make sure you fill in any gaps. Let go. Now, little progress bar appears. And it fills, and I look back. I was looking at another machine to see how fast it was doing it for you guys, and I looked back and it had gone. There's a couple of little areas on here where I will use the little refine brush just to smooth out some little lines and bits. But it really did a beautiful job. In fact, it's really nice. I'll use that. It's content-aware fill. That's what this is. Content-aware fill isn't a person, by the way. It's a process that Photoshop uses to take away the... I actually had the clone tool selected then, would you believe? Let's just go... Don't forget to take away shadows. On bright shots like this, we never get bright shots, obviously, in the UK, but on bright shots like this, abroad, get the shadows out, otherwise people will comment and say, there's a shadow there, there must have been something standing there. Great. The clone brush, clone stamp tool now, it's improved since Suite 7. Just use the Alt key, gives you a little target to select an area, in this case an area of that sandstone, and it fills the brush. So if I move the brush outside of the area, you can see the brush is now filled with sandstone, limestone, I think it is, on the church. I'm going to move the brush back over that little road street name, Rue de whatever, and just click and it's gone. Click and it's gone. That's cloning though. I'd rather use this Perfect Eraser every time. It's just fantastic in the way it works. Beautiful. Now, other tools inside of Perfect Layers, which I think we need to see. How about this one? It's just a brush. In fact, it's just a masking brush. Look what a masking brush does. Now, don't get confused with Perfect Mask and the masking brush inside of Perfect Layers. Well, yeah, get a little bit confused because this does a similar kind of process. Let's just wipe away some of the church with a wiggly line. It's got that checkerboard pattern again. You remember the one I really dislike? But it's just showing you that I can wipe away parts of this picture without having to take it into Perfect Mask if I want to. Don't have to, but it's entirely possible. I'm going to undo that stroke and I'm going to fit the image on the screen. And what we'll do now is to use the same brush and increase the size of it and now wipe away some of the sky. And because I'm the worst retoucher that the world has ever seen, this is what this process is. If I go right up to the edge of the church, I delete chunks of the church. It's absolutely appalling, Bob. I don't know how you could call yourself a retoucher. Well, I'm not. I'm showing you the software, but that is really bad. Let's undo that stroke. How can I get the edge of the church selected really nicely without removing some of the stonework from the church, but remove the sky? In just the way I did in Perfect Mask, but of course in Perfect Mask the image was infinitely more complicated. That's why I needed to use Perfect Mask. Do this. Brush. Perfect brush. Click on it. It becomes a tick mark or a check mark. Young lady in Texas will say check, I'll say tick. And there we go. Now look. Aha! I am suddenly the world's finest retouchist, if that's a word. Look, it's selecting up to the edges of the church perfectly. It's called the Perfect Brush, and it does a really brilliant masking job. Notice when I get to the cloud at the top of the picture, it becomes a little bit kind of disjointed and messy. That's because the area inside the middle of the brush, that minus sign, is actually a sensitive area of the brush. And as I brush over any of the clouds, it senses that there are different colours appearing in the mask as I work. As long as I don't take that little minus sign over the edge of the church will remain in position. But look, I'm masking straight now through the cloud. I think this is a beautiful tool, actually. And for lots of pretty standard masking work, I think this works incredibly well. Click just in that blue bit there, and we're taking away the sky. Of course, I'm performing this masking process breaking my cardinal rule of making sure I have a sky in the background. But I think that's a really nice mask. The Perfect Brush control exists inside of Perfect Enhance, Perfect Portrait, Perfect Effects, Perfect Black and White. It doesn't actually appear in Perfect Mask yet, one day, hopefully. But there's the layer mask again, created by that masking process. Now the last tool to show you of any note inside of Perfect Layers is a beautiful one to behold. It's not the red eye tool, red eye tools. I think everything has red eye tools pretty much these days. But what we will show you, and I just want to make sure that I've got the right images together, is the ability to mask one image through another. Now, let me just find out where it is. My mind's gone, which often happens. You'll know that if you watch these webinars at all. Let's use this one called Head Swap. I actually wanted to use a different image, but can I find it? I've just found it. It's great. It's been moved. Okay, fantastic. So we've got 3 different images open. We've got 3 lots of different work that we've created. We've got the tree shot with the new sky. We got the baby shot with its layers. It's still perfect black and white layers. That's great. And the church with the mask. We're going to do one last process now because it's 15:54. Is that right? I think it is. Time's flown. Let's take this picture, which is a picture in America. So a young lady from Texas must know where this is. It's in Oregon. It's a picture of a place called Mount Hood. It's a volcano, an extinct volcano in Oregon, not far from Portland, which is where the software is created. Now, one picture. This looks like a case of HDR photography. I've got a nice exposure for the sky. I want to increase the dynamic range of the image so that we bring in the foreground. Let's do that. Double click on the next picture, which is called Mount Hood Foreground. You can see we've done this before. And once again, add as a layer. Say OK. New layer appears on top of old image or original image. Now this picture has a good exposure for the foreground, but to be honest, it's a shocking exposure of the sky. If I go to my layers panel, switch off that top layer to view, There's the original image, beautiful shot of the sky, nice detail in the clouds, lovely picture of Mount Hood, awful foreground. Now these two pictures have been carefully aligned. Obviously, I assume it was shot, I didn't shoot this, it was obviously shot on a pretty still day. The trees hopefully aren't moving. The water's rippling a little bit, but that's not bad, we can cope with that. The issue is that the images need to be aligned. Use the transform tool to align your images, if that's what they need. Click on the top layer. It looks terrible. Use my brush. Okay, why not? I want to brush one layer through the other. There is the layer, and there is Mount Hood, but it doesn't look very clever. I need a more sensitive tool to be able to perform this process in one hit. Let's undo that stroke, and let's go to this little beauty. It looks like a little camera, doesn't it? An old-fashioned camera. Click on it. It's called the masking bug. Move over to the image. You get a strange little icon that floats around the image. It looks like that little camera icon, in fact. Click. Wow. It's giving me a lovely soft edge, graduated tint of a mask, if you like. Click in that large circle in the middle of the screen and just pull the whole thing down. Wow, look at that. There's my Mount Hood, and hey presto, I've got a beautiful foreground as well. The two images are combined together automatically. Let's investigate. Go over to the right-hand side layer where now you can see a generated layer mask. By the way, I don't ask for layer masks to happen. They just happen in this software. It's fantastic. I don't need to worry about that. It just does the job for me. The layer mask is showing me this beautiful graduated mask. The top part of the layer mask, the black part, is the hole that we've cut in that top layer to reveal the sky underneath. It's gorgeous. Go back to the image. I get a hand tool. I can rotate by clicking. I always liken this to the Earth in the middle, which is the big circle, and the moon. And if you click on the moon, I need these little hints and tips, by the way, to help me remember how to do things. I'm clicking on the moon and swinging it round. And now look at the layer mask on the right-hand side. It's vertical. Still soft-edged. Is it soft-edged enough? Use the little dotted lines to make the feathering of the mask more pronounced. Then move it back. Use the Shift key to move it in 45-degree increments. We invented this masking bug. It was called the focus bug in Focal Point, if you remember that far back. And the biggest problem with it for most people was that you couldn't set it vertically or horizontally. The Shift key gives you 45-degree increments so perfectly. Oh, perfect. I think that looks great. Once again, if you want to merge your images together, save it out as a PSD, save it out as I always save my images as TIFFs because I want to be able to get the best quality possible. That's great. That's Perfect Layers. I've shown you several different layering routines. We've been into Perfect Portrait, we've been into Perfect Black and White and Perfect Mask to adjust our images. The last image that we opened up and manipulated was the one of Mount Hood. There's my Abbeville Church and my very simple mask using the Perfect Brush option inside of Perfect Layers. Here's a little tree mask with that layer mask that, remember, is portable. I can copy and paste that layer mask into different images, or obviously the original tree image for one, and there's the beautiful baby shot with the different layers. So hopefully you've gained a reasonable amount of understanding of Perfect Layers, the product, and the kind of way that I would work with my layering routines.